Ocular Max Hellion. It's a masterpiece scaled G1 Cliffjumper. What's interesting about this, and this is where people might be conflicted on their opinions, is they chose to go with a alt mode that is more accurate to how the car that he's based on is scaled.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is because all of the G1 mini bots of 84 and most of 85 were based on the Penny Racer Chrono Q scale, which is they took whatever the vehicle was they were based on and squished it to a cutesy SD kind of scale. This,
SD standing for super deformed.
yeah, this is very not apparent with a Volkswagen Beetle because Volkswagen Beetles inherently are already
Tiny.
tiny and they already kind of have that look to begin with. Even though the reality is Bumblebee's actual Volkswagen Beetle, it is a little longer than the actual toy itself. But then when we get into cars like what Cliffjumper is, which is a Porsche 944,
Hmm.
that's a very long body. Porsche 944, which is pretty much what the, I mean, if you want to look at cars that have a similar shape and stuff, that's what the Datsuns, what Blue Streak and Prowl and all of them were kind of pulling their inspirations from in a lot of ways, what Porsche was doing at the time. And so the Porsche 944 here, which by the way in real life is a great car, I've actually worked on quite a few of them back in the day, but it's something that looks bizarre with what we associate with Cliffjumper. And I mean, it's I think what's cool about this is because they decided to go with a more car accurate design rather than screen accurate design, it ended up giving a lot more space in the cockpit to then make an interior. And as someone again who's worked on Porsche 944s, I'm actually quite impressed with the attention to detail on the inside with the boot of the shift knob and the steering column. It's very very similar. All they're missing is the handbrake that's on the left side instead of the right, and it would be completely accurate. So it's really nice. But otherwise, I find a lot of people are probably not going to be a fan of this because it's not the traditional squished Porsche that people are used to from the fiction. How he appeared on the cartoon, how his actual toy was. We never saw Cliffjumper in this kind of alt mode, even though it's technically the correct alt mode, but in the way that it's being displayed here. It doesn't affect the robot mode, interestingly enough, but it does essentially affect the alt mode. And the alt mode also features a little accessory. It's like a little control arm or whatever.
Uh huh.
I'm not really sure what that's trying to be. I must be
Yeah, it
forgetting.
seems a bit weird. Like it almost looks like it's something that will move something, like it'll move something off of the hood or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's. I'm not too sure what it's trying to be because I guess I forgot the episode or something when he had a little small little laser or something that pops out of his hood. But again, it's what's probably tripping me up is also because I'm not used to that visual with this car. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm used to the glass gas from his rear tailpipe.
Hmm.
Like stuff like that. But again, it's just I've worked on this vehicle in real life in this color in this design 100%. The one that I worked on was an 86 944. The rubber trim of the back of the spoiler and everything. And I mean it's very accurate to it. So it's very impressive how accurate it is to what that alt mode is. But that being even the rims, by the way, that's the actual Porsche rims that were used, or the mags specifically. They have that very
Like that design.
that spirograph kind of design there.
Yeah.
So it's very accurate to all of
All the
that. So
spokes.
I'm very impressed with that. But otherwise, as a someone who collects G1 Masterpiece, and I feel that G1 Masterpiece needs to be show accurate, I
Mm.
think they really should have went that route. And I love Cliffjumper. Cliffjumper's like in like my top 10 of favorite
Do
characters.
you do you s- maybe like if Hasbro does do a cliff jumper, do you see him doing like, let's say, a Datsun Brothers size actual.
I think they'll do something that's
But
more
but
show
then
accurate.
like when you transform them, you're compressing them and compressing them and compressing them to be like Bumblebee size.
I look at what they did with the Bumblebee and how they were able to pull off what they did with the Bumblebee and the Bumblebee's basic scale, because that's literally what it is. And it's they took what a Porsche was and crushed it down to what the scale of the silhouette, if you will,
Hmm.
of a Volkswagen Beetle from
Right.
'66. So to me, that's I could see Takara doing the SD version, being true to that.
Mm.
And what would probably work out best for them is if they do that, they probably won't even have to pay a license.
Ah.
Because then at that point, they're not even emulating 100% an existing vehicle.
Mm.
Now they're just doing some kind of scrunched down.
But I would assume they would still
They
double
probably will
check.
still throw them a
I
bone.
mean, I think also because you're building up all this goodwill, and you
Totally.
don't want to, and you don't want this one little misstep of like, oh well, it doesn't really look like your car. And it's like, oh really? Well, we're taking back all of our licenses.
Well, considering that I get a
Like
feeling,
you don't want to crush a foot yet. You know what I
considering
mean?
that I get a feeling Jazz is definitely due.
Hmm.
Like, like in my opinion, I think the next,
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is just like,
yeah.
don't do it just yet. Get the jazz out so that we can buy it, and then you can do whatever the hell you want.
But I mean, this thing's cool. As someone who works on Porsches and BMWs and a lot of European vehicles, I appreciate it from the mechanic standpoint. But I think it really is unnecessary considering what Masterpiece is trying to do.
Right.
This is for a very specific audience of people. It's kind of like, how do I explain it? It's kind of like for people that really like hot rod, and you'll get that perfect Masterpiece G1 hot rod, and then you'll also get one that's really perfectly copying the Dome Zero,
Yeah,
which is kind
yeah.
of what hot rod really was pulling from.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's kind of like that's what that is. It's like this is something that if it was a deluxe scale would have fit in perfectly with the classics line. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I see it. I see it. I see it.
Like that's kind of where it more belongs. Where classics was trying to be like, well, if the car was a real car, and and it was this scale and da 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 and like this and that, because that's what more or less classics hot rod was in a lot of ways,
Right.
and a lot of the other classics toys. So, I mean, I dig it. I think it's really nice. This is something, in all honesty, like if I had it, I'd keep it. Like I'd be very happy with it because I love Cliffjumper as a character, and I think that alt mode looks spectacular. But that being said, I don't know about the rest of it. I really don't. I don't think the market that collects Masterpiece is they're going to want to have their accurate screen accurate Cliffjumper,
Hmm.
and this hasn't achieved that yet. Doesn't even have the big bazooka, which is kind of interesting. But
Yeah, that's a bit
that's an
weird.
interesting thing that's lacking. Doesn't have a gun, doesn't have a bazooka. Maybe it's something they're going to show later. But definitely we'll keep you guys posted if something else shows up. Ocular Max Hellion.